Do we need any more chairs in here? I can put a few more chairs in maybe. What are you here for? Say the speeches, this part of it, they all be said. They all be said. Okay, we're ready to. Dave, you want to go ahead? Or, I mean, they know you have enough information, right?
Thank you for coming to this celebration. This is the classroom of Mrs. Daniels, 4th grade teacher, and fond memories of being in this very classroom a few years ago. I'm going to make a short introductory talk, and then I'm going to sort of turn it over to other classmates. And I'll be brief. I wrote this out this morning. I'm going to read it. I don't want to miss any details. But this is from my heart. Pretty emotional. Elm Heights School is a truly special and historic place. I love it. Our classmate and friend, Tom Teter, was the Little League home run champion, an all-state football player, camp counselor in Minocqua, Wisconsin extraordinaire, and a person who thrived in the outdoors. Tom was dedicated and always in tune with Mother Nature. He grew up at 1414 Maxwell Lane, where science and respect for the environment were a daily message of his parents. His mother was a consummate, and I do mean consummate, scientist. His father was a master electrician and as we all know from the neighborhood, when corsages would be brought to your mother or sister for a special event, supplied the entire neighborhood with these beautiful, gorgeous orchids. Tom's bedroom was a laboratory of sorts with bugs and butterflies, which Tom accurately identified by their species, decorating his walls. Tom could catch butterflies like nobody I ever saw. I remember going with him down Maxwell Lane to Larry Pennington's front yard, where there were milkweeds and butterflies everywhere. And this was in grade school. This is not high school. This is way back. And T just had a knack for this. In 1981, as a high school teacher in Sheridan, Wyoming, let me interrupt there. Tom said, you got to know Tom. Tom said, we have a sign outside of Sheridan. It says, progress is not welcome in Sheridan. He said, all we want is our way of life. But he said, there are 300,000 people in Wyoming. How can we argue with the coal companies when they have more employees than we have citizens? In 1981, he was named the National Biology Teacher of the Year, which, according to Tom, was nothing but a bunch of politics. I assure you, Tom did not have a political bone in his body. Now to the point. Tom was prepared to teach by his real world experiences, his unending curiosity, and his educational background, including this room. He was destined to be the best of the best. Pam Gilliott told me yesterday that Tom had laughter in his eyes. By far and away, his most important asset in teaching was his incredible ability to make every student, no matter what their station in life, feel good about himself or herself. He communicated the positive and the negative with a twinkle in his eyes. He was the magic man. This room at Harmony School is dedicated to the importance of all students, be it in Bloomington, Indiana, or the south side of Chicago. To feel good about themselves. Hopefully all students will have a boost of the magic and go forward in their chosen fields of interest and be happy. Now, in organizing this, we received thoughts from our students, from our classmates, and I want to read a few. Steve Curry Steve doesn't waste time when he communicates. Tom lived up the hill from me on Maxwell Lane when we were young. His parents raised orchids in a greenhouse in their backyard. It was fascinating to walk through that extra warm, moist greenhouse with all the unusual plants. His father built a TV for my parents in 1948. It was the first TV set in the neighborhood, possibly the first TV set in the state of Indiana, and made my house the most popular in the neighborhood. Question, Bill?
Okay, the little kids all wanted to watch a Lone Ranger. Every Thursday night or whatever night it was on. And I never will forget that. They probably
Steve's mother, I think, is the last of our parents to have pass on. She died recently at age 99. And like a lot of our mothers, all of our mothers, she put up with a lot. Example, she takes Steve and me to McCormick's Creek Park to hunt snakes. Now, I would go with Teter and hunt. I didn't hunt. I would go Teter and fish. I didn't fish. I would go Steve and hunt snakes, and I never wanted to catch one of those things. So she comes over late that afternoon, drives in, and she said, "Well, boys, did you have any luck?" Steve says, "No, Mom, we just didn't have any luck at all." "Well, hop in the car." So we get in the back seat, and he pulls 3 snakes out of this bag with their heads just barely out of his fist. Sticks them around the front seat right in front of her nose. And she went into a 4-wheel slide on Highway 46, tires screaming, smoke, and I can still smell the burning rubber. And he said, "Well, maybe we did find a few. They were harmless little water snakes. Why would anybody get excited?" But that was the neighborhood. It was a great place to grow up after World War II. Jeannie Lockridge Mueller. Jeannie's mother was our den mother, another saint, absolute saint. Put up with all of us. Jim Binkley, he's here, myself, you name them. We had this rubber ball in their basement, and this ball had this unique ability. You could drop it on the floor, it'd bounce up higher than from what you dropped it. And we would throw that thing around their basement, against the walls, against the furniture, and great fun. Here's what Jeannie has to say. Now, Jeannie could write, all right? She taught freshman English at Harvard, but Topo, as you recall, she was not in your honors English class. Somehow she didn't get into honors English.
This is golden. Found some complex of some sort.
Our teacher for the rest of us was Mr. Sloan, substitute teacher. And Jeannie would turn her theme in, and he would write on the top of it, A+. And then he'd read it. He said she knows twice as much as I'll ever know. But here's what Jeannie has to say. What I remember most about Tommy was his exuberant warmth. His smile lit up the room. He had a remarkable capacity to make everyone feel welcome. I can imagine him in a classroom sharing his sense of wonder with his young students. Weren't they lucky? Exclamation mark. His love of the natural world was contagious, and that world surrounded us in the Bloomington of the 50s and 60s. Then there were those exotic orchids in his father's conservatory. No wonder he became a biologist! Exclamation mark. I can't imagine a better tribute to Tommy than a well-equipped science classroom in our old elementary school. Jeannie Lockridge Mueller. Then we got one here from Scott Mann. And Scott and I talked about Tom a few days ago, maybe a week, about an hour and a half. Honestly, Scott did most of the talking. Here's what Scott had to say. And what he didn't say was discussed with me. But my friendship with Tom Teter began in our boyhood neighborhood and continued through Elm Heights School and beyond. His youthful mischievousness always included compatible, natural, educational curiosity, which flourished continuously. He possessed an easy manner, was a good friend, a solid citizen, and highly valued educational pursuits. Tom's youthful endeavors of all kinds seems a good grounded prerequisite for future learning. I agree. Here's a little longer one, but it says a lot. I asked these people to keep it short. Most complied, some didn't. This is from Dave Edgerton, who said he had a conflict, couldn't be here. And Dave Edgerton writes, this is good. Tom's humane impulses and good-humored self-confidence, innate gifts that served him well as an educator, were already in evidence when he was in high school. September 1958, University High School, sophomore year. I was a new kid, and I was getting picked on. The picking on only lasted a few weeks, thanks largely to Tom. To any kid, a week of ostracism is an eternity. The reason I was getting picked on should have been obvious, but I just turned 15 and was recognizing the obvious was not yet part of my skill set. The reason I was getting picked on was that I had Elvis hair, slicked back, long on the sides with a pompadour. It had yet to dawn on me that at U School in 1958, Elvis hair was considered hoodie, and hoodiness was frowned upon. I had just arrived from Westtown School, a distinctly unhoodie Quaker prep school in Pennsylvania, where, don't ask me why, all the boys had Elvis hair. At U School in 1958, the haircut required for social acceptance was not Elvis hair, but a peeled head with a little tuft in front, a sort of reverse counter comb. There's some pictures around here that will establish that. Bill Wiley brought them. One morning early in the semester, as English class was getting underway, Tom leaned across from the next row over and said, "Hey, Dave, are some of the guys giving you a hard time?" An adolescent boy's ego is an extremely delicate thing. I scrunched down in my chair, abashed, and mumbled something like, well, yeah, maybe, I guess, a little. Tom leveled a finger pistol at me and winked and whispered, "Dave, get a haircut." I got a haircut, and the sun shone forth on my high school day. With duly peeled scalp and reverse rooster comb, I proceeded to have an epic good time at university school, and I treasure to this day my memories of U-School friends and activities and monkey shines. I never did thank Tom. I wish I had. Winnie and I saw Tom and Molly fairly often, till not long before Tom passed away. I seriously doubt he would have remembered how he pulled me back from the brink of social oblivion when we were in high school. But I know he would have been amused, and I think it's likely he would have leveled the finger pistol at me and winked. Now we've got one more. I'd like for somebody to read this other than me, because this is from Elaine Patterson. Do we have any volunteers? If I don't see a volunteer, I am volunteers. Teter, step up here and read this. Now, this is another person that knows how to use words.
I remember being in this room. My memory still serves me at my age. Anyway, this goes from Elaine Patterson. My thoughts on the occasion. Dedication of the Tom Teter Science Room, Elaine Patterson Mills. Tina Turner was right. We don't need another hero. As we all well know, pop culture has sold us one hero after another, and we have somehow descended from that exemplar of righteousness and humility, Superman, to current heroes that are ceaselessly thrashing, smashing, crashing, and bashing. I've never been to one of those. Honoring Tom Teter today gives us the opportunity to remind ourselves what a real hero is. Tom Teter was and is a real hero. Pop culture does not care to remember that the word hero comes from the Greek myth about Hero and Leander, who nobly sacrificed their all for each other out of love. No war, guns, or rocket ships involved. What those of us in the room know and learn from the namesake of this wonderful place we're learning is that to be a hero, you need not be superhuman. The Oxford English Dictionary tells us that you need only exhibit extraordinary bravery, firmness, or greatness of soul in connection with any pursuit, work, or enterprise. Did I say only? That certainly seems a tall order, but Tom taught us that striving for the best in ourselves is what can lead each of us closer to these goals of heroism. Heroism, like happiness, is a journey, not a destination. Something set Tom Teter apart from his early days. No one who saw him on the football field ever doubted that. There may have occasionally been others among his opponents who were better players, but they could not have been more heroic. Tom was heroic on the field, yes, but he was also sportsmanlike. Far from rough, gruff, and merely tough, Tom was a gentleman. Far from impressed by his own heroics, Tom was proud of the other folks in his world, be it football or teaching. And that combination of achievement and fellow feeling may be the most important lesson one could hear from Tom, from Mr. Teter. How did this wonderful teaching laboratory come to be? It was born, It was born of respect, admiration, and love for Tom, who was an inspiration to so many friends, teammates, and students. And Tom's students learned year after year what were perhaps the most important lesson Tom taught: how to become one's own hero. And so Tom would doubtless agree with Tina, looking for something we can rely on. There's got to be something better out there. Love and compassion. Their day is coming. All else are castles built in the air. With thanks to Graham, Hamilton, Lyle, Terry Britton, songwriters. Lane Patterson. I knew Tom in my youth, as many of us did, back in the neighborhood, in which some of our endeavors weren't always so educational and eclectic, but they were fun.
Now I want to talk very briefly about football. Topo was our quarterback, and you all are familiar with statistics. And he had one of the most incredible statistics ever in high school football. Every pass he threw was completed for at least 17 yards. He completed 56% of his passes. There was just one problem. We only threw the ball 18 times all year. Topo, would you come up and read the list of words that you put down for Tom?
So I have a couple of media calls. First off, David, this is great. Second off, I'm starting to see why I never got an A in English. Jesus Christ. But anyway, I just thought of Teter. They said, just write down some things you think of. And what I ended up with was kind of like today. There's just a lot of different words that describe him. So I just scribbled these down. I think we could probably, you've got proof of those now. But first off, I just thought of him as a gentleman. He was always, at least around parents, as I know he was mischievous. And he was too damn smart. That was his trouble. I didn't ever have any of that inquiry about bugs, for God's sake. But I thought of him as a gentleman, certainly a scholar, truly a scientist. He didn't teach me, but he taught everybody else, and obviously did a great job. I thought of him at high school as an athlete, and whether it was little league or football or basketball, and he was our fullback, he was our punter, and he was just a strong, athletic, coordinated guy with a great attitude. One thing I could kind of dig over, if we used to run through those tires, and you see ads on TV, and we try to do it. And Teter, of course, he was stocky, you know, but when Teter would run through those things, he would put his arms out, and it was obviously for balance. And I remember looking at him and thinking, what the hell? You know? And then I tried that, and yeah, that did make it easier. You know, your arms out, you didn't trip over the tires so many times. But he was quite an athlete, and in his athleticism, in high school, we had certain exposures, but his athleticism went on his whole life. And this was being an outdoorsman and a hunter and a sort of a naturalist was the word I came up with, and an outdoorsman. Even later, he was a gardener, botanist, florist, and probably most important, he was a husband, a father, a friend. Cool guy.
I'm going to end with an article. Cheryl brought this, Cheryl Fife, and it's a picture of her And I need to get my glasses on. It's a picture of her from the Elm Heights Herald. God Almighty, April 28, 1950. Cheryl Fike is Queen of Carnival. But here's the story of interest, Cheryl. Right below your picture. Police arrest PTA committee for selling food too cheaply. With sirens screaming, Bloomington policemen swooped down upon Elm Heights School early this evening with a warrant for the arrest of the PTA Carnival Committee. After rounding up all PTA members and clapping them in irons, Police Chief Ray J. Hinkle and his men explained that they were charged with selling good food at ridiculously low cost, a practice which the restaurant associates allege is un-American. Clanks change. Clanking his change angrily, Principal Glenn Allen demanded to know whether we are charged with being communists. I'll go ahead, the rest of the story, but this was Elm Heights Herald, 1950. Now, the other aspect of this is financial support for the room, and all I can say is keep that money rolling in, and appreciate your being here very much. Thank you.
So I've been trying to identify all you guys in this picture. I think, is this Dave McCrae right here? This picture's from when? 1928, something like that. In this room, Vern Goodman, our development person here at Harmony. My name's Rock. I'm the director at Harmony School. And somehow she found this at the Monroe Historical Museum. Dick Schmaltz may be in here. Harmony School is here because of Dick Schmaltz. He was, a lot of you probably remember Dick Schmaltz. He was in the first class here in 1926. When the school went through transition, Dick came to me and talked about Harmony moving in here. So Dick may be in here somewhere. But I know we're here today to celebrate Tom Teter and the love of science in general. But, you know, it's been amazing working with Dave McCrae on this project for the last couple of years. I mean, you know, obviously this is what true friendship's about. And so I just really want to thank Dave and Liz for loaning them to us these last couple of years. And it's just been amazing what he's accomplished. So Dave, thank you very much. And I also want to, you know, acknowledge Nancy, Tom's sister here, and Molly, Tom's widow here as well, for coming today and supporting this. I also want to thank the committee that put this together, Dave, Ann Binkley, Bob Appleman, and Becky Griffin Appleman, and Frank Young, along with our Harmony folks, Vern Goodman and Tanya Walden from the Development Office, and Mark Bell, who's doing, I wanted to welcome Elm Heights alumni all over the world. This is being live streamed because there were several people like Elaine in New York and the Lockridge folks that are around the country. And who put our website together again? What's the fellow's name in DC?
Oh,
Eric Schweitzer. So if Eric's watching, I want to thank him. So this is being videotaped, but it's also being live streamed. So again, it's, when Harmony, my wife and I started Harmony School in 1974 with 4 students. when we moved in here, we had 90 students. And when we moved in here in 1985, we made a commitment to try to be good stewards of the Elm Heights legacy. And that legacy was multifaceted. One was, this is a historic building. It's the oldest school in the state of Indiana, with two caveats. One, it's still being used for its original purpose. Hasn't been converted to condos or office space. And secondly, that it has its original footprint. There's been no wings added on or anything like that. So when we did the historic restoration of it in 2003, and that was led by Carl Cook, I mean, these windows match up exactly with the 1926 windows, the fans in the room, just the way the wires were done in the building. I mean, just everything was very historically accurate, as you know, the way historic preservationists and the Cook family takes care of property. But when we decided to expand the square footage, we went underground. We expanded the basement, put an elevator in and new floors with terrazzo that matches up with the terrazzo floors. But one of the reasons we did that was to maintain the footprint and to maintain the natural, the woods that the kids love to play with and the green areas outside, and to maintain the historic integrity of the building. I was a little worried when they talked about going underground that they had just finished, not long before that, shoring up the south side of the square. So I figured that they could keep the building up and go underground too. So it seems to have worked out okay for the last 30 years. But so part of being a good steward of this building was to maintain the property. And we worked really hard to do that over the last 30 years. Another part of it was to try to build a relationship with both the neighborhood and the alumni of Elm Heights. And actually, we've maintained a great relationship with the neighborhood. Many of our students live in the neighborhood. We work very closely and host the neighborhood association. But the alumni association, even though, as I said, Dick Schmaltz was the key link to the old timers, so to speak, at the beginning, along with Fred Gregory and other folks, we were never actually able to establish Elm Heights as an alumni association until our committee of Dave and Ann and Bob and Becky and Frank came along. Frank did not go to Elm Heights, but went to university school, as most of you did as well. And so Frank got involved because we hope to build a relationship with the university school alumni as well, and have the Elm Heights Alumni Association be a springboard there. So that was part of our commitment, was to build these relationships. And thanks to this committee now and all of you being here today, we've taken a big step in doing that, because we really want to maintain the history of Elm Heights. And Tom's childhood jacket that Dave was able to obtain, that's gonna be a catalyst to set up like an Elm Heights historic area in the building. So that we're gonna do. So if any of you have memorabilia like the piece that Dave just wrote about the carnival, or any other things that you want to temporarily loan us, we're gonna have an area, and on permanent display will be Tom's jacket. So the other, and we wanted to maintain this history of excellence in education too, that Elm Heights was able to, that Dave talks so much about. Dave always talks about the class, the 62 class being better than, I mean, Dave was a walking history, along with Carl Cook and many of you. I mean, because Elm Heights meant so much to a lot of people. And so the stories that have been told to us over 30 years, a lot of people come in and just ask to walk through the building and see the building. But there's certainly a history of education excellence here. And there's a history of community as well. Again, as exemplified by all of you coming today, and Dave leading what being done to honor Tom's memory. I was able, by the way, to meet Tom when Tom moved back here. I'm not sure, I think he came over to see the building. Anyways, he got to meet some of our kids and hang out here a little bit and see what we were doing with our science program, and donated a microscope and gave us some financial support as well. So I got to know Tom a little bit. You know, I certainly expected to get to know him for a longer period, you know, and then unfortunately he passed away. But this, it was really great to get to know Tom a little bit that I did. But one of the things in terms of being a steward of this history of Elm Heights was when we got the building, our kids did a lot of research on the history of Elm Heights, the neighborhood and the school. And while Elm Heights, a lot of people had this impression that it was all university professors' kids that went here. And when we did the research on it, we found that it was much more diverse than people gave it credit for. A lot of the, both people that owned limestone industry, companies lived here, but also artisans that worked in the limestone industry worked here. So it had just much, much more diverse than people gave it credit for, which is part of Harmony's mission too. I mean, part of the concern about Harmony taking over this building was it going to be, although our first 14 years certainly weren't like that. We started in 74, as I said, and then we got the building in 85, opened, and then our first full year here was 86 in the building. Harmony, we call it Harmony School because we didn't want to be an exclusive private school. We wanted to demonstrate that people could come together from as many different backgrounds as possible, and that an intentional community could be built of all ages, 3-year-olds to 18-year-olds, and also people from many socioeconomic backgrounds, much like Elm Heights was. So 80% of the kids from Harmony are on scholarships. So we really, and 40% of the people that go to Harmony would be eligible for what we call free or reduced lunch in public schools, so they come from low-income backgrounds. But 80% of the kids said they're either on full scholarship or partial scholarship. So that's our commitment to maintain the stewardship of this diversity. And so the money that's been donated to this room, dedicate this room, it does go to maintain this room. And this room is an integrated, the teacher that's had this room for 30 years, who couldn't be here today, teaches art and science together. So Emily, who is our high school science teacher, and Martin, who was a science student in this room, and then in the high school, I'm going to give you a little bit of a flavor of the science program at Harmony. But this room, the radiators are painted wild colors, and it's not only, she integrates art and science in a very unique way. And but the money goes not only to maintain this room, and somebody talked about a well-equipped science department. I mean, for us, as Emily will explain to Martin, science doesn't only take place in the building. This was one thing Tom, we use the outside a lot, not only of this 2.5 acres here, but the whole Bloomington and Southern Indiana community is our laboratory. But so the money that's donated to support this room goes to maintain the room, but it also goes into the Harmony School Scholarship Program, which is to maintain that diversity we had. So, and we want to have for perpetuity. After I retire, we do have an endowment at Harmony. It's a growing endowment, but we really want to always be this diverse. We want to be a private school with a public purpose. We work with public schools all over the country and in Bloomington as well. We do consulting for them on certain principles and ideas that we've developed. So I want to thank the people that have donated money for the room already. There's going to be a plaque. I don't know where it is. Is it up outside? There's a plaque. Oh. Anyways, the plaque is not in its final form. So if anybody wants to still donate money to have their name on the plaque, you can do that for about another week or so. Vern's the person to talk to. If you live in Indiana, just to let you know, if you live in Indiana, you can actually donate to money that will go to support this room and to support the scholarship program. And we have a special tax credit program. So you get for sure you get 50 cents back on the dollar. If you still itemize with the change in the tax law, you can get up to another 30 or 40%. So sometimes people, can get 75 or 80% back. But 50% you get back for sure, whether you itemize or not, if you live in Indiana. If you live outside of Indiana, you still get your federal tax deduction. So if you're interested, you can talk to myself or Dave or anybody on the committee or Fern. If you want your name on the plaque, it just needs to be done the next week or two. But we're hoping to use this as a springboard to really build the Elm Heights Alumni Association, to have conversations more with the university school alum about a lot of the similarities between Harmony and University School in terms of working with the university and the wide age range diversity and the commitment to progressive education ideals and excellence in education in general. So I would like to just turn it over to Emily and Martin. Martin, you want to come up? Martin, again, this is Martin Medicus. Martin, graduate from Harmony, what is it, about 10 years ago now, 8 years ago? 8 years ago. He went to the middle school and then went to high school. And Martin, he'll tell you about himself. Just give you a little flavor of our science program. Then Emily.
So, like Rock said, I'm an alum from Harmony School. I graduated in 2009. I obviously didn't know Tom, but I've actually really enjoyed hearing the stories you've told, and I appreciate like being able to sit in and listen on that. I'm also not technically a Bloomington native. I grew up outside of Spencer, and I went through that school system, but I owe Harmony a lot. When it was time for me to go to the middle school, I didn't want to stay through the Spencer school system, and many of you as Bloomington natives would probably understand my desire to get out of there. And so we tried homeschooling, and that didn't work out. And then we looked at Bloomington. We looked at going further, and we found Harmony School. And so in 8th grade, I came here and started my education here. And this was the first room that I studied in with Ursina as my science and health and art and photography teacher. She has a black room in the basement in that expanded space. And I owe this room and I owe Harmony a great deal because it allowed me to really flourish as a student and as a young sort of social person. I took classes at Indiana University and then went on to go to Hampshire College in Massachusetts, which is in many ways a spiritual successor to Harmony, in that it's open and a lot of students go with scholarships, and there are no grades, and it's all based on project learning. And then recently I came back and using what I've grown to be interested in the environment and science here at Harmony, and then at Hampshire College, I went to the SPIA graduate program at Indiana University and graduated with a double master's. And I don't know that would have happened if I hadn't come to Harmony. If I'd stayed at Owen Valley, I don't think I would have gone that route. And I'm very, very glad that I did. And Emily will be able to tell you more about the high school science program, but in the spring, it looks like I'll be teaching here myself for just a semester. So I'll get to see the experience from the other side. But really, I want to thank you guys for taking care of this school and making it exist, and up until the point that I got to use it, because my life wouldn't have been the same without it. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Emily Sproules, and so I teach science in the high school, so it's right at the other end of the building, but I'm close colleagues with the teacher that works in this room. We do a lot of collaboration. My son is in 8th grade, so he actually goes to class in this room and is another beneficiary of programs and everything else that happens at Harmony. And so thank you so much for making all of that possible and for continuing to support it. It's really an honor to have listened to you guys talk about Tom and all the different things that he does. Not having ever gotten to know him, but have heard a little bit about him, and it's really nice to sort of hear that some of the stuff that we're doing here is in the same spirit of his love of bugs and getting kids outside and all of that stuff. And we do a lot out in the grounds. We actually put in a butterfly garden when I first started here. It's doing really great. It looks great right now, and so that I think is something you would probably enjoy. We have a new pollinator garden. A student just this past semester started bringing in his beehives, so that's out there. So we have a lot of that entomology love that happens. And so part of what I do is really also fostering that individual project-based learning, giving kids the opportunity to do the kinds of things that it sounds like you guys got to do with Tom. and that he fostered in his students. And if you go down the hall, there's some posters that my students have generated. They're different projects. This fall, I actually have a whole group of students that's looking particularly at microbiology. So they're lucky enough to get to use the microscope that I know is part of what Tom's legacy here at the school. And other students too. A lot of them are learning, different things. We did a whole microscope lab, and so having those sorts of resources and your support with that really means a lot to our kids, because they love doing that stuff, and they get the opportunities to try lots of different things. So thank you. And I think we'll be around afterwards a little bit too if you guys have specific questions about the science program. Not really why you came here, so I'm happy to answer questions. And but thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Bob Appleman, and I grew up in Elm Heights area like a lot of you. And I'm sort of the current chair. I don't think we have chairs. I'm just sort of the main member of the alumni, Elm Heights Alumni Association, which is only about 6 months old. But one of the things when we got together, we found out that there is so much nostalgia about this neighborhood and this school. We found that a lot. We invited two elderly ladies, or sisters here, that were 96, I think, 98. They were here in the first year that Elm Heights was here, and started talking about how they walked to school, except they walked from where the part of Bloomington where they had the circus set up their tents, and were they'd see the elephants and watch them carry the poles that they used to set up the tents, and then they walked to school every day, but they walked through, she said, Bryant Park, except at that time that was a cornfield. And so they learned their own ways of getting through to get to here. It was just amazing how much of the history of Bloomington kind of was coming from all over, to meandering through cornfields, across neighborhoods and everything to get to this school. As we found out, even though there's a sign at the end of that entrance that says girls over the top, and there was one over here that said boys, they never really adhered to that regimen. Yeah, and our time, yeah. In the 30s. But the thing is, there is so much in the wall. Like if these walls could talk, obviously there'd be just tons of stories, and you all are carrying the stories. So the Elm Heights Committee is dedicated to trying to dig up those and gather those stories. I know for me it was very important to be able to just walk to school, because I'd come from my house over on Davis Street by Sarkis Tarzan, and we meander. Then all of a sudden, Joanne Darby would appear, or Ann Shell, or some of these other people that we all know would meet, and we'd sort of gather and then walk in all together. Except for the days when I got the special assignment of being one of the traffic guards. So I got to wear a orange belt, and I got a badge too. Did you get it? So that was an important thing. So we came here into the basement and hauled out this battery charged flashing light that we'd set down in the corner of Woodlawn and First Street. And we were dedicated to protecting the other students, of course. The ones that we didn't care too much for, we ignored and just let them cross the street whenever we wanted to. But it was an important time to be made important. I honestly do not remember much that took place in the classes. I did remember getting a little bit apprehensive when Mrs. Arthur started to go through her come to the board and solve this problem that I have on the board, which I was never able to do. So I didn't take long. I just went up and the stuff and then came down, sat back down again. Anyway, Mr. Fleener was my 6th grade teacher. But of course, we all remembered and look forward to the carnival. And we all got very good at knowing how to stand by the chair, and then when you were pushed out of the way, you moved to the next chair quickly so that you could maybe actually end up bringing home a cake on the cakewalk thing. And then there was fishing out here in a booth. So, I mean, there was quite an elaborate time that we all had getting that together. So those are wonderful memories that we have, and I just want to mention that the people that were, again, on the committee is myself, my wife, Becky, David McRae, Frank Young, and Sally showed up for a while, and I think, yeah, she did. And we've had people floating in and out, but anybody that's really wanting to go through and to dig through some of this history, you're welcome to actually become part of the Elm Heights alumni. The school went from 1926, I think, to 1982. And so you got 56 years of history that's there. I want to thank especially Fern, who did so much of getting the stuff together. And we got our first meetings with like, how do we get in touch with these alumni? That's a real problem. But then we said, oh, wait a minute. My wife's with University High School. A lot of the students went to UHS. There's some email. We didn't have email when we were going to elementary school, of course. But we did end up knowing David Gray, and that he had assembled the University High School email list. So
inherited it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, thank you, David.
I volunteered to inherit it.
Well, yeah. And as your wife says, that's why she's ready to disown you. Right?
She went to your school too. So
Okay.
okay.
I don't remember that. I'm signing that form, but anyway. But I do remember that we had a special allegiance with University High School, mainly because of the experimental quality of harmony is very similar to the experimental school type of motif that was running in University High School. So it was very much a project-based school when we were going through that. Now, the thing that we need desperately is that same kind of contact to Bloomington High School. Because when students graduated from here, it was a diaspora. Because some went to University High School, but some went to Bloomington High School. Some people left town. Some people went to other high schools. So we're looking for distribution lists or email lists or anything else that we can get so that we can make this more of a celebration of the community. It started out with the community coming here to Elm Heights. So we want to be able to reinforce that and get in contact. So we'll be pounding the pavement around the neighborhood and things like that to try to get more contact. But this is still an important building. It has a great history to it. It is still an important school because of what Harmony's philosophy of education is doing to support the students, as you heard. And so go look around some of the things that some of these students have done in their final projects, and you'd be amazed. And Mark, thanks a lot for your doing the video as we're streaming across the airwaves. So he's doing a class on game design, which is one of my interests. And then also he's got students that are doing video. And so they're going out. I think you actually were invited to show your videos at, or was it the game show?
Couple of film festivals.
Couple film festivals, couple of games, yeah, just how it rolls off his tongue, you know, that's easy to do. Anyway, so the Elm Heights Alumni Association is going to be trying to get people interested in supporting this science class, but also supporting the goals of Harmony School as well. So that's where the donations are going to really be helpful to keep that ball rolling. Yes.
There is a clipboard, I think 2 of them may be going around. If you haven't signed it with information that's there, it's, you know, nothing deep. Please do, so that we can be more in touch with everybody and know what you want to do. We hope some of you will join us in doing more with this group. It's an incredible thing. It's sort of this memory lane thing that's just wonderful. Rock, thank you so much for all of your work too.
Yeah, and I met my first girlfriend here, Elizabeth Parks. If you're listening, we're in. But then I actually, when I went to university, high school, I had a motorcycle, so then she met me. Anyway, so that, any other questions or Rock, where should we go from here? Are we done?
Yeah, we're done. Unless somebody wants to say.
Share any thoughts?
Say something.
Yeah, Frank.
Tom, I got to know Tom. First of all, he was a football hero to me at U School, but apologies to others who had my dad for biology, but Tom was his favorite student and took him to Mexico with us. And I went to Mexico in '65 with Tom, and if Tom was nothing else, he was fun. He was great to hang out with, but he was also, like everybody says, he was a gentleman, had good common sense. So in Mexico, then I was 15, I guess, and you could buy beer. And so Tom and I were buying beers, and I started wanting to order more. And Tom said, "No, Frank, you shouldn't drink any more of that. That's enough. We're going home." So Tom has a good sense about that. But going out and collecting these insects with Tom was really inspirational, because if Tom saw something, he was curious. And his curiosity was intense. And I'm sure that's what made him such a wonderful biology teacher, was inspiring that in his students and other people. And in thinking about our mission here and what we're doing with Harmony School, I think Harmony School sort of is that motor for curiosity in kids that may be lacking in the school system that's based on testing alone. And that's what inspired me to be part of this, is I really want to see Harmony School succeed in this mission of inspiring curiosity in kids to go on beyond just a life of mundanity into something that's really wonderful for them, something that opens the world to your possibilities and to your curiosity and what's possible. And the idea that a scholarship fund would allow kids who otherwise might not be able to have this kind of education, really, I think it's going to make a difference for all of us in the future. And I'm inspired to help it, and I hope everybody else is too.
Thank you very much.